On your mark. Get set. History lesson.
Oh, boy. Boy, did I hate that.
Not as much as everyone else listening. So you heard about the first Olympics to hit LA, or as I like to call it, the semifinals. This is the real Olympics, everybody. Yeah, that's the sound of everyone not in the stands at the 32 Olympics.
They were so poor.
So the first LA Olympics was a big success, but by the time the 80s came around, the Olympics, much like most everything else in the 80s, had lost its way.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we got to find it.
Oh, no.
Homeward
Did the 70s ruin everything?
Wave a little toaster. The 1968 games in Mexico City started not even 2 weeks after the Tlatelolco massacre, covered by our old friend Ruben Salazar.
Yeah.
Listen to March Madness to find out about that, where the government killed a bunch of college students. So that was the climate of the 68 Olympics. 1972 Olympics in Munich had 11 Israeli athletes kidnapped and killed by Black September.
That's right.
The 1970
Oh, yeah.
that. The 1976 games in Montreal left the city in $1.16 billion in debt. That in the long run, it ended up costing each citizen of the city $700 in taxes, and it wasn't paid off until 2006.
Oh, my. Wait, what country is this?
Montreal,
Oh,
the
like
country, the
Canada.
great country of Montreal. Then the 1980 games in Moscow was boycotted by the United States and 60 other countries because of Soviet intervention in Afghanistan in
Oh, yeah.
1979.
Jeez.
So by the time the 80s was in full swing and the swing revival was still a decade away, it was a huge risk for any city to put on the
Yeah.
Olympics, and the Olympic brand was said to be broken, but that never stopped little Los Angeles, the city of big risks and minimal rewards. Just ask everyone on Hollywood Boulevard. The city had bid for the 1980 games as well, but lost out on that one to Moscow. But come 1978, when it was time to select the 1984 city, there were only two bidders.
Oh,
Los Angeles and Tehran. But before Tehran could make a formal bid, their country went through a sweeping revolution and politly withdrew the submission.
my.
So it's weird that both
By default.
I know. Say with Berlin, we're kind of we're a little busy right now. So that left Los Angeles as the only city in the world interested in hosting the 1984 Olympics. And after a quick round of asking, isn't there anybody else in every language imaginable, LA was once again awarded the games of the 23rd Olympiad by default.
By default.
This was the first Olympics in the United States in 52 years. The 1932 one was the last one. In fact, shortly after the success of the 1932 games, the Southern California Committee for the Olympic Games was formed to try to bring the games back as soon as they could, which turned out to be a brisk 52 years. Now let's get into the specifics on why nobody wanted to host the Olympics. They thought canoeing was boring.
It is.
More importantly, no city wanted to use public money to pay for the Olympics.
Yeah.
So the modern Olympic Games started in 1896, and that was privately funded, but every other one since then was paid for with taxpayer money. And apparently, if you do anything long enough, it becomes a tradition. So that was the way the International Olympic Committee liked the games to be paid for, but they disguised their argument as nobly putting on the games for the sake of the games, no matter what the cost. But times had changed, and the LA government saw that, so they decided that their Olympic Games would not be paid for by the public, but would be privately funded. And this was so offensive to the Europeans that the IOC refused to allow them to do that. Then Mayor Tom Bradley said, okay, then we're not hosting the games. And then the IOC remembered there was no backup city, so they agreed, but they wanted to see a plan before anything was finalized. So Tom Bradley set up a private group called the Los Angeles Olympic Organizing Committee, headquartered in beautiful Culver City.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, this time of year. Oh my God, the way that they have a train.
The trees are doing what they're supposed to do.
Die.
Burn upon impact of the sun.
The chairman of the chairman, this was more of a Justice League than a committee, was a man named Paul with the almost perfect last name, Zifrin. So close.
So close.
The executive vice president was Harry L. Usher, but the main character here, the president and general manager of the committee, elected March 26, 1979, Peter Ueberroth. Ueberroth was the founder and head of First Travel Corporation, which at the time was second only to American Express as the largest travel business in North America. So the plan, the LAOOC, that's what I call it, spearheaded by Ueberroth, was to raise a $500 million budget made up entirely of ticket sales, sponsorships, and television rights.
Wow.
As Ueberroth explained it, free enterprise, private sector Olympics with no taxpayer money. So let's go over his plan. Ticket sales. Pretty straightforward. Give people tickets. They give you money in return. Find out the tickets are fake. You're already on a beach in Guatemala. You don't have to answer to anybody.
You'll be drinking out of a coconut.
Tickets for event went on sale 2 years in advance, and for the opening ceremony at that point, you could get in for between $50 to $200, but the day of, tickets were selling for $1,500.
Okay, that's much.
In the end, I'll pay it. I'll pay for everybody in this city ready to go. In the end, they ended up taking in just under $140 million in ticket sales. Phase 2, sponsorships. Set your phasers to buy. With the Uberoth plan, commercialism became a part of the Olympics for the first time. He sold off the rights to companies to put the Olympic logo on their products and to market themselves as the official blank of the Olympics, the official tie of the Olympics. You were probably wearing the official diaper of the Olympics.
I was, but I remember growing up with a lot of weird Olympic stuff, being like, what is this?
Why am I brushing my teeth with the official toothpaste of the Olympics?
It makes your teeth stronger, that's why.
It tastes like the Congo. There had been sponsors in previous Olympics, but this time Uberoth didn't allow as many sponsors in the theory that if there were fewer sponsors, the big names would pay top dollar to make the cut, and this theory worked out perfectly. 43 companies were licensed to sell official Olympic merchandise like Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, M&M, Mars, and IBM. McDonald's was the official hamburger provider of the Olympics. They even sold off spots on AT&T Presents the Olympic Torch Relay for $3,000 a kilometer. Everything cost money. If you won a gold medal, you had to provide the gold.
Yeah, exactly.
This was also the first time track and field stars openly endorsed products.
Oh boy.
The committee ended up taking in $130 million in sponsorships. Strangely enough, Nike wasn't the company it now is, so they weren't willing to spend the $4 million to be the official shoe of the Olympics. So instead, they put up murals all around the Coliseum of Nike endorsing athletes. The official shoe title went to Converse.
Really?
Yeah.
You can't run into Converse.
No.
Please don't even walk fast.
We needed to find an official foot repair man. The official sock title went to Old One with a Hole in It. I'll be here all month, in case you forget.
Because I'm sure you'll be asking, because why not?
Now, the third prong was the TV rights. As the Otara Millionaires Club once said, hey, buy the rights. And ABC did just that for the whopping, not Whopper, nice try Burger King, sum of $225 million to broadcast 180 hours of coverage, making it the biggest Olympic broadcast ever. It was also the first time that the games were designed to appeal to non-sports fans and shown in prime time, so the constant presence of TV cameras was something LA loved, and they took that into consideration during the planning for the games. They hired the design and architectural firms of Sussman, Preja, and the Jerd Partnership, beautiful names, to decorate they just flow off the tongue. They hired them to decorate the town in what was termed festive federalism.
Oh boy.
Which basically meant covering the city in bright colors like magenta and green and hot pink and orange and flashy, shiny things that would pop and look good on TV. So that's why everything was so ugly in the 80s, because it had to look good on TV. That's why we needed a president to be so good looking, because there's TV cameras everywhere.
That's why we got an actor to do it.
So all this and some more private fundraising added up to the first privately funded Olympics since the first modern one. And as much as the IOC hemmed and hawed, this is now part of the standard practice of how all the Olympics are run.
Yeah.
Saving money was priority number one in the planning. The LAOOC ran on no frills, and Uberoth could verge on the edge of cheap many times with buildings for the committee that weren't big enough to hold everyone and the staff and many people not being paid enough. But Uberoth wanted to save as much as he could, even though after the games he gave himself a $475,000 bonus.
Don't hurt yourself patting yourself on the back, buddy. Anyways.
The other innovative feature of this planning was the use of already existing venues, which saved hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes.
Building new venues and structures that never get used after the Olympics are over is usually what sends Olympic cities into debt, but the LAOOC saw a way around this. They only built 3 new venues and they adapted all the rest of them. 2 things were working to LA's advantage. One was that we had already had an Olympic Games here, so there were structures in place that were known to be able to get the job done. The second was the sprawl of the city. Normally, the reason most people hate LA, it made the LAOOC plan possible because nobody was expecting everything to happen in one built-up city center, because LA didn't have just one built-up city center. We have many unbuilt-up city centers. So since there were so many ready-to-use venues spread throughout the city, we could bypass the building up of one area and just showcase how many different parts of the city there are instead.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so we used what we had. They renovated the Coliseum, giving it a new paint job and a new track circus. Everyone had to play around the circus.
Go ahead.
They put in digital scoreboards and video screens. Then they used the Coliseum for the opening and closing ceremonies and for the track and field stuff. They had archery at El Dorado Park in Long Beach, basketball in the Forum, boxing in the LA Memorial Sports Arena. They crossed city limits and had canoeing in Lake Casitas near Santa Barbara.
Wow, they went all the way to Santa Barbara?
Yeah. They had equestrian at Santa Anita Park and stepped outside the city again to have some stuff at Fairbanks Ranch near San Diego, more equestrian stuff. Fencing at the Long Beach Convention Convention Center, soccer at the Rose Bowl, gymnastics were held at UCLA at Pauley Pavilion, the John Wooden Recreation Center, and the Sunset Canyon Recreation Center, handball at the Forum, and also out of the city at Titan Gymnasium at CSU Fullerton, field hockey at Weingart Stadium on the East LA College campus, judo was at the Eagles Nest Arena at CSU LA.
Wow, they went everywhere.
Everywhere. The pentathlon was at Coto de Caza in the Heritage Park Aquatic Center, yet again outside the city in Irvine. Rowing was outside the city at Lake Casitas again. Shooting at the there was a shooting at the Olympic shooting range. Oh no!
This just in from 1984.
Shooting at the Olympic shooting range at the Prado Recreation Center in Chino. Volleyball at the Long Beach Arena. Weightlifting at Albert Gertzen Pavilion at Loyola Marymount. Wrestling in the Anaheim Convention Center. Yachting in the Long Beach Marina and Harbor. Baseball at Dodger Stadium. The venues they built were the Los Angeles Tennis Center at UCLA for
Turnus.
They played turnips. Then the cycling velodrome at Cal State Dominguez Hills, built for $4 million, paid for by the Southland Corporation, which was replaced in 2004 by the ADT Event Center, but the StubHub Center is where the original velodrome was.
Okay.
Cycling also took place on the Artesia Freeway and at Mission Viejo.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just stay to the right.
Stay in the carpool lane. Nobody uses it.
The third thing they built was a new $4 million swimming center at USC to replace the tiny 1932 one paid for by McDonald's. It was filled with cheeseburgers and barbecue sauce. Swimming also happened at the Raleigh Runnels Memorial Pool at Pepperdine. The LAOC also gave money to found the UCLA Olympic Analytic Laboratory to test athletes for performance-enhancing drugs.
That happened in 84?
What, you think people weren't doing drugs in 1984?
I didn't know you were getting tested for it in 1984. I thought that
they
started
were being tested, but they were mostly looking the other way. They couldn't read the results because they were so high.
Cocaine was still legal then. It was understood.
You're not using marijuana, are you? No, just morphine
slow.
and cocaine. So they're still using this drug testing center, but it's under the new name, the Peter V. Uberoth Building.
Oh, okay.
For the Olympic Villages, they just used the dorms at USC, UCLA, and UC Santa Barbara.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
they just they were really
repurposed?
not even repurposed, just like changed the sheets. They were really thrifty with things to make these places fit into the festive federalism aesthetic that they were going through. They just put banners on them and called it Olympic.
Fine.
Just like draw a ring.
Yeah. Draw a couple rings.
They were revitalizing parts of town that needed it without being at the expense of the locals.
Yeah.
So the stage was set and Bain was ready announced to let the games begin. But then something not totally unexpected happened. On May 8th, 1984, the day the torch relay from New York to LA began, 12 weeks before the opening ceremony, the Soviet Union announced that it was boycotting the Olympics.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh,
Soviets. Joining them were the countries allied with them and in their thrall: Afghanistan, Bulgaria, Cuba, Czechoslovakia, Ethiopia, East Germany, Hungary, Laos, Mongolia, North Korea, Poland, South Yemen, and Vietnam. They cited a few things as their reasons for boycotting. One was the blatant commercialism.
Right.
Another was that they feared for the safety of their athletes because of the anti-Soviet hysteria they said was being whipped up.
They weren't wrong. Red Dawn.
They were sure that protests would arise, but they were not sure that the U.S. officials would do anything to protect the Soviet athletes if anything happened. Not entirely wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear they were boycotting to get back at the U.S. for boycotting their Olympics.
High five. I like cheap retaliation like that.
Let's play the Olympic Games. Let's do this sort of who does what with nuclear bombs.
Who can get to the big button faster?
That was the newest game in the Olympics. Who can turn the key fastest? The boycotting commies instead had their own games called the Druzhba 84 or the Friendship Games. One can only assume they were lame.
Who can shake hands better?
Who gives the tightest hugs? Go.
We all win.
Except for you, and you. You two go to slave camps.
No hugging allowed.
But as the motto of the LA Olympic goes, the show must go on. So Stalinism be damned, go went the show. But before the fun could begin, some questionable things had to be done, like Mayor Tom Bradley giving new temporary power to the LAPD to put a lot of suspected, which always...
Never do that, please.
My favorite start to any sentence.
Please kept it in check.
They put a lot of suspected gang members behind bars.
Okay.
I'm air quoting furiously, so that they wouldn't cause any trouble during the games. This obviously caused a lot of trouble. Trouble that would spill over in the next decade during the riots.
Oh, great.
Security was also a big deal here. They rounded up over 100 helicopters. The Coast Guard stationed over 3,000 troops and brought like a fleet of craft out to sea protecting the coastline. About 100 National Guardsmen were sent in, and it all added up to the largest security force ever amassed during peacetime.
Did they bring the cowboys too?
They bring in the cavalry.
That is an insane state to live in.
Yeah. They could have just launched war. Like
we have everybody here.
The Soviets are over there. We've got all of our friendly nations.
Yeah.
Let's just attack.
They were all hanging out in Culver City.
There were also scores of other personnel, including 25,000 volunteers. The opening ceremony was set for July 28th, but starting June 1st up until the end of the games, they had the Olympic Arts Festival that featured art displays and performances all over the city from over 145 groups performing in 12 different languages. Italian baton twirlers would pop up randomly in the streets.
Oh, cool. That guy's throats. Oh, he's supposed to be doing that.
Japanese rope acrobats hung off the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion.
Oh.
Someone get them down. This art festival
Get down.
You get off of there. This art festival is also responsible for all the Olympic murals that linked the spread out venues throughout the city.
Along the freeway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the ones.
Yeah. You know, you've graffitied all over them. The night before the opening ceremony, they had prelude to the Olympics, a gala concert at the Hollywood Bowl, and then came July 28th. A huge opening ceremony at the Coliseum. It was the biggest one ever. Period. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
You can watch the whole thing on YouTube, and it's considered the first of the spectacle opening ceremonies that they all are now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, thousands of actors were involved. 84 guys in tuxedos played Rhapsody in Blue on 84 baby grand pianos. They brought out the mascot for the LA Olympics, an eagle in an Uncle Sam hat named Sam.
I've seen that before, and I've always rolled my eyes, and I had no idea it was linked to that.
Yeah, he was designed by Disney animator Bob Moore, and even had a cartoon where he was a detective and used the magic of the 5 Olympic rings to solve crime.
Turn this podcast off. We're done.
Turn this podcast off. We're watching all of them.
That sounds like Apollo Creed entering to fight Rocky. That's all I could picture.
Better received walking into the Coliseum than Sam the Eagle were the athletes from Romania who got a standing ovation for being the only Soviet satellite country to ignore the boycott.
Oh, cool.
They were all enslaved. One person who didn't need a standing ovation because he could give it to himself was the man in a jetpack who landed in the stadium.
What?
Yeah.
We had jetpacks in 84?
Mm-hmm. Well, we had one.
He won't give it to us.
All right, so give us the jetpack. The ceremony's over. You forget I'm in the jetpack. And he was never seen again. He quickly crash landed into the Natural History Museum. This ceremony also introduced the world to the new theme song of the Olympics, Sugar Sugar by
the Archies.
Since 1968, ABC had always used a song written in 1958 called The Bugler's Dream by Leo Arnaud. That's the one that goes, I like that, where it goes dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah,
dun, 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 dun. I'm a bugler, this is my dream. But for this, the LAOOC commissioned a new song to be made, and the man they hired to do it was the Cantina song composer himself, John Williams.
Really?
Yeah, he played Olympic fanfare and theme, and eventually these two merged together to be the music of the Olympics that we now know today. So his, like, they like dun 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 dun, and then it goes to dun 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 dun. That's John Williams. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He was gonna submit
the theme from 1941.
Yeah.
There was no theme there.
The theme was just John Belushi screaming.
Scream crying.
Which is the only cries he could do. Then came time for the big moment. Sam the Eagle was about to tell the world who was really responsible for Watergate. No one wants to hear it,
you
Sam.
and me.
He wasn't a crook. We were the crooks.
We've all been Twilight Zoned. What did stupid Sam the Eagle do?
Sam, I don't know. He probably got burned by the jetpack.
Did he regurgitate food in everyone's mouth?
He fed his babies, which were horrific. After that horrific moment came the lighting of the Olympic cauldron.
Oh, cool.
2,500 pigeons were released, and running into the stadium with the torch came Jesse Owens' granddaughter, who then passed the flame to Rayford Johnson, former athlete and the man who was by RFK's side when he was shot.
Really?
It's all coming together.
Yeah.
Here, warm California guns, hear about that. Johnson was having some leg troubles at the time, so in case he couldn't light it, on hand as the backup, Bruce Jenner.
Really?
Yeah. But Rayford delivered, and he lit up the same cauldron that they used in the 1932 games.
Wow.
And with that, President Ronald Reagan, the athlete, he declared the games open. It was a spectacular ceremony that the Soviets accused of being propaganda, and the games began. And with those, which is always required by the Soviets, the games began. Even with the boycott, there were still more countries and athletes involved in these games than any before it, with 6,829 athletes from 140 countries competing in 221 events in 26 sports.
Damn.
This included 17 new sports to the Olympics, 13 of these being for women, such as synchronized swimming, boxing, rifle competitions, rhythmic gymnastics, and some cycling, but the most notable was the marathon. Women previously weren't allowed to compete in the marathon because in the 20s, a doctor said that women who ran too far would become old too soon.
Oh my God.
When you hear about sexism in the past, you think it's a little more veiled than that.
You think it also has more like medical research behind it. Dude, she ran from 32 to 61.
I'm not kissing that. She ran herself frumpy. So they would become too old too soon, and nobody wants that. Am I right, sausage bros? So this woman's marathon went from Santa Monica College down the Marina Freeway for a little bit and finished in the Coliseum. This was the marathon where Gabriella Anderson Scheiss could barely finish the race because she missed, you know, when like have you seen that?
The video where she like gets all wobbly and falls down.
Because she missed the last water station, and the August LA heat apparently wasn't her favorite climate to run forever. So that's why that happened.
But I didn't know it was in LA.
Yeah, neither did I.
That's weird.
Where else would it? Of course it happened in LA.
Yeah. She did it for show because that was her audition reel.
She was auditioning for some sort of weak athlete in the Weak Athlete Chronicles. This was China's first Summer Olympics since 1952 and their first full Olympic team ever. Athletes from other countries had to be told to stop training on the freeways when they weren't busy.
Worst relay practice ever.
All right, so you get in the Volkswagen Bug. The Olympics always sound like fun to me, that sort of stuff happens. Yeah. These were the games of Greg Louganis and Mary Lou Retton becoming the first non-Eastern European gymnast to win the all-around title, scoring perfect tens on the floor exercises and vault to win gold. Carl Lewis of America tied the record Jesse Owens set in 1936 with gold medals in the 100, 200 meter dash, the long jump, and the 400 meter relay. It was a good year for the Americans. A Chinese athlete named Li Ning got the most individual medals with 6, but the USA had the most medals with 174.
Wow.
37 of those went to athletes from UCLA. To compare, we had 174. Second place was West Germany. They had 59 medals. This was great for the USA, not so great for McDonald's, who promised to give away free Big Macs for every gold America takes in, fries for every silver, and a Coke for every bronze. They did this in the 1976 Olympics, but they didn't take into consideration that in 1984, the USSR wasn't competing, so America took all of the medals and McDonald's ended up losing millions of dollars. That's why they got rid of all of those cartoon characters.
We can't afford to pay them anymore.
Grimace, I'm sorry.
You gotta hit the road.
You gotta go back to Monsterville. There was a lot of fuss made over the potential traffic apocalypse leading up to the games, and the first Friday of the games was referred to as Black Friday because there were events going on at 19 venues across the city.
Ooh.
But things were planned so well, everything was fine. A lot of people had left town for the Olympics. Like, I'm not getting involved. Yeah. Others stayed home. People had their work hours staggered to avoid rush hour, and the unions agreed to not make deliveries until later in the day, so everything worked out.
Nice.
It's considered one of the most successful, if not the most successful, Olympics of all time, and it was capped off with an alien spaceship landing in the Coliseum during the closing ceremony on August 12th. Really cool.
I bet it was. Was it an ET reference, or was Jefferson Starship just trying to get another gig?
They were actually the delegates from the USSR decided we want to be involved, actually. The people in charge feared that without the Soviets, less people would be interested and thus less money would be made. They were wrong on both accounts. More people watched these games on TV than anything that had ever been on TV before. Wow. Over 6 million people came out to watch the games in LA, which was also a new record. The soccer final at the Rose Bowl between France and Brazil had a crowd of 101,799, which set the record for the biggest crowd at a soccer game in North America.
Wow.
As for the money, this was considered the most financially successful games ever and was one of only 3 to turn a profit, the others being 1948 in London and 1932 once again in Los Angeles. They had spent $546 million, but in the end, they had a surplus of $232.5 million. And the deal that the LAOOC had made was that 60% of that would go to the U.S. Olympic Committee, but 40% of that would stay in Southern California. So the organization founded to manage these funds was called the LA 84 Foundation, who makes sense now, who took the $93 million they got from the Olympics and grew it into $200 million. And with that, they funded youth sports for over 3 million kids in Southern California just from these Olympics.
Very nice people, by the way.
I wouldn't know. I don't play sports.
We met them at the Archives Bazaar.
Oh, I love them. I play a lot of sports. Yeah, they let us hold the Olympic torch.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah, they charged us $3,000 for that. It was worth it.
It was the best check I've ever written.
best debt I've ever gotten into. They also used this money, the LA 84, they set up the largest sports research library in North America called the Paul Zifrin Sports Research Center, which I want membership to. But the bottom line was that it was just a really well-organized Olympics. Uberoth was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year, and then went on to be the commissioner of Major League Baseball, and also headed the U.S. Olympic Committee from 2004 to 2008. Now, if you're one of those people who wants the Olympics back in LA, you better start writing letters begging Uberoth to come back. They had tried, right now, we're in the present. LA had tried to be the U.S. candidate for this year, 2016's Olympics, but they lost the nomination spot from the United States to Chicago, who then lost the games to Rio. We've been trying for several years to win the 2024 Summer Olympics, and it's actually looking really good right now. I would say Boston was the official U.S. choice for 2024, but Boston backed out because they didn't want any excess budget to be paid for with tax dollars. So LA, always ready to do things nobody else wants to. They stepped into that. Olympic costs are getting crazy again. People say that the reason Greece is, because they went bankrupt putting on the Olympics. And they estimate the LA Olympics, which would be the 33rd Olympiad, they estimate it would cost $6 billion, and anything over that would come out of taxpayer money, but they assure us that the rights and sponsorships would cover it all, and they've been so bold as to proclaim that there will even be a $61 million surplus when it's over. And I may not know much about billion-dollar investments, but I believe that. This is what they have in mind so far. They'd follow in the pattern of the 84 games and try to use as much as what we already have as we can. The games would be centered around 4 clusters in the city. Nougat.
Nuts.
There's the coastal cluster of Westwood and Santa Monica. The valley cluster of the Sepulveda Basin, which they wanted to use in the 84 games, but the community said no way. This time they intend to use it for archery and shooting and equestrian and stuff like that. The South Bay cluster, which would be focused around the StubHub Center. The downtown cluster, which would stretch from Exposition Park to LA Live with gymnastics in Staples Center, fencing in the Microsoft Theater. And then there'd be bits and bobs, as you would say, around town, places like Griffith Park, the Forum, the Rose Bowl along the LA River, Lake Casitas again, and the Santa Monica Mountains. They'd have to build some temporary things like an elevated track over the football field at the Coliseum to make room. And also they plan to turn Figueroa completely car-free during the games. Like you could just, so you can walk from the Coliseum to Staples Center. And now with a new Stalker Stadium, it's about time we built one.
It's mostly bushes.
They're putting the new soccer stadium where the LA Sports Arena was, which they intend to put a pool in for this, as an NFL quality football stadium coming, which we're looking better and better every day. Also on our side is that NBC, who now broadcast the Olympics, live in Los Angeles, so they don't have to go anywhere. They even scrapped a plan to build up a whole athletes village along the LA River at Piggyback Yard, and they're instead going to use the dorms at UCLA again, which will save literally $1 billion in costs. We even have the quasi-religious slogan of "Follow the Sun" and a logo of an angel for this. All of this is being written off as a religious performance. But getting the Olympics won't be as easy this time as it was in 1984. For one thing, we aren't the only contenders anymore. The finalists right now are LA, Budapest, Rome, and Paris, which are like the strongest contenders of any places in the world.
Well, you could Rome if you want to.
You can ride it on the Paris Metro. No, Budapest. Another thing is that more security is needed these days than there used to be, and that could cost a lot more. There's also more athletes involved than there were in 1984, and things might not be as manageable. On the plus side, there's much better public transportation now, and by 2024, there's going to be tons more that are fully operational. If LA hosts again, we'll be the second 3-time hoster ever next to London, and the word is that Paris and LA are considered the front runners right now. Spies from Paris have been scouting LA for Olympic tips.
Really?
These spies have been captured. They're presently being tortured for answers.
They're being tortured in Disneyland.
The lucky or cripplingly unlucky city will be chosen in September 2017.
Looking forward to it.
Fingers crossed, in the sign of the cross.